recording this video in August 2025, and in 2026, most of the guitar players out there that are watching YouTube videos are going to be stuck in exactly the same place as they are right now. Now, if you want to be a guitar player that actually breaks out of that plateau and is the exception to the rule, then what I'm going to give you in this video is a step-by-step plan that you want to take to become what people class as a master guitar player. Let's get into it. What I'm going to take you through in this video are the stages that I would take my students through as a one-to-one guitar player, or in any of the courses that I've built at my online learning platform, Cutting Edge Guitar. I look at all guitar playing that there are three key areas that you need to master to become the guitar player that you want to be. Now, that is that you need to learn your fretboard inside and out. The second area is having a polished guitar technique. The third area is developing a musical vocabulary based on those previous two elements. So when you know your fretboard inside and out for the genre that you want to play, and you have the technical facility that allows you to get your ideas out, you then finally need to have some ideas. You need to have some musical vocabulary of things that you can say on the instrument. For those of you that want to go way deeper on what you're going to see in this YouTube video here today, I have created a free course called the Cutting Edge Guitar Blueprint that takes you through all of this stuff in detail at my online learning platform, Cutting Edge Guitar. The links for that are in the description box. So go and grab them as and when you want it. So let's start talking about fretboard knowledge. First things first, every single guitar player out there wants to know the notes on the fretboard. It is absolutely killing your progress if you don't know what the notes are on the fretboard. So it doesn't matter if you want to play simple bar chords or if you want to be absolutely shredding. If you don't know that information, it makes everything impossible. For example, two different scenarios. You're looking at a chord sheet on Ultimate Guitar and it says play me a G sharp minor bar chord. Well, it's all well and good if you know a bar chord shape. If you don't know that that's where there's a G sharp, you don't know where to put it. You're absolutely screwed. On top of that, if you wanted to play a guitar solo over that particular G sharp minor chord, most guitar players are going to go for the pentatonic scale as their basic soloing tool, like this. Now, if you want to be able to play up and down the guitar neck with that basic scale, let's imagine that I'm around about the 11th fret area, okay? If you don't know where there's a G sharp, there's actually a G sharp at the 11th fret itself on the A string, and then there's one also at the 9th fret on the B string. That tells me that I'm in shape 3 of something called the cage system, which we're going to talk about in a moment. And I've also got vocabulary that I can play in that area to come up with guitar soloing ideas. But like I say, if you don't know the notes on the fretboard, you're absolutely screwed. So that's the first and foremost thing. The next thing that we're going to talk about here is the cage system. So let's get into that. So when I meet students for the first time, what they think they know about the cage system is the stuff that we're going to talk about on these first few slides. So the caged system, generally most guitar players' knowledge of it is that it's the shapes of a C, A, G, E and D major chord played along the length of the neck to allow you to play one key in various different areas. That's what people explain to me that they know of the cage system usually when they first come to me for a guitar lesson. But for anyone who doesn't know that, let's talk about this in the first instance. So what you can see on the slide and then what I'm playing on the guitar right now is a C major chord, okay? An open position C major chord. Now any beginner probably would know that. Now, as I move into the next slide, what I'm now playing here is a C major chord, but in bar chord form, okay? Now, the terminology of this, for most people, is that this is the C major chord in its A shape. Now, that's because when you look at this part of the chord here, where you see my cursor on the screen, those three notes there, if we take that back to the open position, looks like an open A major chord, okay? Now, that's what people generally explain this as, is that it's a C major chord in its A shape, right? That's kind of a confusing terminology, but we'll get to sorting that out in a moment. So the next one of these along looks like this. This is a C major chord in its G shape, because that shape, as we take it back down here, looks like an open G chord. Then we've got the next one along, again, is a C chord in its E shape, because again, if I take this shape down here, it looks like an open E chord. For anyone who's curious about this as well, this is how a capo works. So if you look at what my first finger is doing, my first finger is just barring across all of the strings. That shape that I've now got on next door to that is an E shape. So when you're seeing something that would say, oh, capo 8, and then it's an E chord. Well, actually, no, it's a C. That's why when you're talking to a piano player or any other musicians, they have got no idea what you're on about, because harmonically speaking, that chord is C, because it has the notes C, E and G in it. Okay, so then the next one along, as you see on the slide, this is a C chord in its D shape. Again, because if I take it down here, it looks like an open D major. So, this is generally what people say that they know about the Cage system. Unfortunately, that is quite a confusing way to look at it, and that's because it's confusing. That's where most players stop in their search for learning about the Cage system. So if we now look at this slide here, we're going to rearrange Caged into EdCag, and this is going to start making it much more usable for you. Okay, so what we've now got on the slide on the screen here, this is an E chord, an open E chord. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to refer to this differently now. Instead of saying that this is an E chord in its E shape, we're going to refer to this as E shape 1 or position 1 or zone 1, something like that. We just want to use, it's up to you whether you want to call it a position or a zone, a shape, but we want to give this a number, okay, rather than a name based on an open chord position. So this is an E chord in shape 1, okay? So next door to that now, that will mean that this, which would have previously been referred to as an E chord in shape, in its D form, we don't want to call it that. We want to call it E chord shape 2 or position 2. Okay? The reason why is because you're not going to be confused now between shape and key. Okay? Then also as well, this information is much more easily transferable to different keys. So the next one of these along, we've got an E chord in shape 3. Then if we go along to the next one, we've got an E chord in shape 4. And then finally we've got an E chord in shape 5. Okay, so now we have a numerical system for the Cage system that allows us to play a chord just in 5 positions. So if I just quickly recap that, E shape 1, E shape 2, E shape 3, E shape 4, and lastly E shape 5. Okay, let's look at that from a different perspective. Rather than starting in an open position, let's look at this starting from a bar chord position. So now what we've got on the slides in front of us is an A major chord, position 1, E shape. Now the E shape I've written there in brackets, because of course if you are, some people will have learnt this and it's very hard to kind of get rid of it. If you're looking at this for the first time, I would be thinking of all of these kind of chord forms, the one that you're seeing me playing right now, as position 1 or shape 1 chord forms. And again, once that's transferable to other keys, let's say if I do an F, I'd call this F major, position 1. If I did G, G major, position 1. A major, position 1 is the terminology for this now. Now, there is also some more information on this slide. So what I've done is I've put a circle around this note, and this note. So the reason for that is that these are the root notes. Now again, this goes back to what I'd said earlier about it's really important to know the notes on your fretboard. It's really important to know the notes, and then the next thing is with your Cage system, you want to know where the root note lives within each shape. That's super important for allowing you to play through chord progressions, and then also when we embellish our Cage system with the pentatonic scales or arpeggios or modal scales, whatever else that you want to use, it's going to help you outline chord changes better, and then of course play through chord changes if you're interested in more advanced styles of music. So let's now have a look at the next shape along. So this is an A major chord in shape 2. Okay, and of course I've put the root notes circles in here and here. Okay, that's very important stuff for you to remember. Next along we have the A major chord in shape 3. And then the root notes are here and here. Very, very important stuff to remember. Then you've got your A major chord in shape 4, root notes here and here. And then lastly, we have an A major chord in shape 5. Now, if anyone is watching this and playing along with me, you may find it very hard to fit your hands in up here. Now, these chords aren't necessarily chords that you're going to play as a rhythm guitar player. This is all about fretboard visualization. But if you want to be able to just fit that in, you can take it down 12 frets, which is an octave, and then that's much easier to play that shape down here. Okay, so at this point we now have looked at playing chords in 5 positions. Now, you don't want to just be playing in major keys for the rest of your life, so of course there is a minor version of this as well. So A minor chord position 1 looks like this, and of course the root notes won't change because we can't, although we're going to change the shape of the chord, we can't change the location of the notes. That would be absurd. So we've got an A minor chord, position 1, E shape for those diehards that can't get that out of their mind, but I do encourage you to start thinking about this as shape 1, shape 2, shape 3, etc. So we've then got an A minor chord in shape 2, which looks like this. A minor chord in shape 3, which looks like this, which is a nasty chord to hold. Generally, when you put that on the guitar, I would put these 3 fingers on and then add the 4th finger at the bottom there on the root. Then you've got your A minor chord in shape 4, and lastly your A minor chord in shape 5, which looks like this. Again, easier to play down here to fit that in if you want to. Okay, so once you've got your basic scaffold of your caged system, what you then want to do, this is a very, very important skill, is align the pentatonic forms with those caged positions, because then everywhere you go on your fretboard you'll be able to play a chord and then associate a scale shape with it. This is a game changer for most of the people that come to me for lessons. This is probably the most important thing that they will all say, I didn't know that. And most people, they don't know this when they're coming in for a guitar lesson. Although there is an absolute plethora of information online now, it's usually very hard to find the good stuff. So this is something that is a real key takeaway with this video. And again, if you want more in-depth, a breakdown of all of this sort of stuff, I would highly recommend that you go and grab my free course that's in the links in the description. Or recently I have just republished these. You can get them on Amazon. These are my guitar technique books, and they are available in digital for people who want PDFs, guitar profiles and all of that good stuff. But if you want to get what I class as my guitar technique encyclopedia, you can go and grab this from Amazon. The links are also in the description. In there, I'll go much, much deeper on all of this stuff and give you hundreds and hundreds of exercises for improving your technique and all of that stuff. But anyway, let's get back to it in here. So when you are aligning a chord form and then one of your pentatonic scale forms with it, you start to have much more of a command over the fretboard. Now, something else that is on the slide in front of you here, what I've done is I've also put in there the formula for the scale, because to have a real command over what you're playing, you want to know the intervallic structure of that scale, and you want to know where those notes are within the shape. So we've got the root, the minor third, the fourth. P4 stands for perfect fourth, perfect fifth, flat 7, root. Perfect fourth is basically like the designation perfect means there's no dissonance against the root. Perfect fourth, perfect fifth. If I was to play something like the minor third against the root, it's got dissonance in there. Once you've aligned your pentatonic scale, shape 1 and everything with a chord, you want to do that in all 5 positions. So you want to be able to go, here's your shape 2, and then here's your shape 2 scale. Then you want to be able to do, here's a shape 3 chord, here's the shape 3 scale form, shape 4 chord, shape 4 scale form, shape 4 chord, shape 4 scale form. When you understand the relationship between the chords and the scales, that really opens everything up for you. So again, free course in the link below, or if you like books or whatever, you can also get all of that in the links below. So you don't want to just do this for pentatonics, you want to be able to do this for your modes of your major scale. So we've now got your Dorian position 1 up on the slides. So what I can see as I'm looking at that, here would be a minor triad chord, or I might have a minor 7 chord in position 1. That might even be an extended chord, a minor 9 or a minor 11, something like that. Around those chords, I'd be looking at using the Dorian mode. So what you see on the screen is this. Now, a great way of looking at things like modes is to not get totally terrified about the theory and just look at it as, if we look at this, we've got the root, the minor 3rd, 4th, 5th and flat 7. 5 of the notes that are in this shape are what are already in our minor pentatonic scale. What we're doing is we're just adorning that pentatonic with the 2nd and the 6th. So we're just adding a couple of notes so that we get a Thin Lizzy sort of twiddly notes. Okay, so it's just about adding some extra notes. Now, what I've got in front of me here is what we call a caged position. So this would fit around a caged chord and the minor pentatonic, and we're just adding in those extra notes. But another way that you can look at this is to lay out all of the modes in 3 notes per string. So what we have up on the screen now in front of us is the exact same notes but laid out so that we have 3 notes on every string. Now that's ideal for if you want to play shred guitar, fusion guitar, anything that's more technical. But what I would say to anyone who's watching a thing like this and they want to get really, really good at the guitar and really understand that fretboard, is you want to learn all of the good things about caged, and you also want to learn all of the good things about 3 notes per string. Throw away the things you don't like or that aren't useful about each system and then mold them together, because then you have a much better command of the fretboard rather than this sort of online debate of 3 notes per string is better or caged is better. For example, the guys who love 3 notes per string, they'll say you can't really shred with caged. There's some sort of truth in that, but also as well, the guys who say with 3 notes per string, you can't really play through changes. There's also a lot of truth in that. It's about seeing the fretboard. It's not about a way of playing, okay? So understanding all of these elements is a way for you to see the fretboard and allow you to see all of the options, and then you develop the techniques and vocabulary around it, okay? What you see on the screen in front of you now is actually another 3 notes per string pattern, which is probably more aligned or more akin to the caged shape. This is another way that you can be like, well, it's ridiculous to not see that there is a correlation between the 2 styles, because if I was to go from the root note here and just basically take this minor 3rd that's over here and put it here, all the rest of this shape, which is a 3 notes per string shape, is the caged shape, okay? So I would discount the flat 7 here, take the minor 3rd from here and put it here, then all of a sudden that whole shape is that caged shape. So what I'm playing, or what's on the screen, is this. And like I say, if I was to get rid of this flat 7 here, then take this minor 3rd and put it over here, it's now exactly the same thing. So where you actually really want to get to is what's on the next slide here, which is that you look at the fretboard, and if somebody is playing an A minor 11 chord underneath you, or or an A minus 9 chord, just a plain A minor 7, you see the fretboard as I can use A Dorian. And where you really want to get to is not only can you see all of the different notes and everything like from the scale, but you want to be able to see all of the pentatonic forms, all of the arpeggios, all of the triads, etc. Now that sounds like an absolute mountain to climb, but if you are following a structured path, it really doesn't take all that long. When I wanted to learn all of this stuff, I took lessons from a really great teacher, but I was about 17. Within a year, I could really understand all of this stuff, and then I've just spent the rest of my life perfecting it, taking it in different directions and going from there. So if you have a real structured program, it's actually quite easy to get all of this down. It's not easy when you're just following random information from all over the place on the internet. So if you want to start that structured path, go to the link in the description underneath this, go and grab my free course, start that right now. Okay, so the next thing that we said that we would talk about, once you know your fretboard and you've got all your fretboard knowledge down, you then want to move into the world of technique. Technique is just the vehicle that allows you to play whatever it is that you want to play. And I break technique down into 4 chief areas, which are legato playing, which means hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, all of that sort of stuff. Then you've got alternate picking, which is to use the pick to attack the notes. Then you've got sweep or economy picking, which is using pick strokes in the direction that your notes are moving. We'll get into that in a while. And then finally, tapping. Tapping gets a bad rep, but tapping realistically is just the answer to big stretches on the guitar. So let's have a look at some things that you could do to start improving your technique right now. So if we was to get into legato, one of the things that you perhaps want to do, there are millions and millions of different exercises that you could do, but something that I would suggest that everyone starts to do is develop vocabulary with the technique as soon as they can. Now if you take the first 2 beats of this run that I've put in here, the first 2 sextuplet beats would be... Now that on its own is just an exercise that can be run 100,000 times. But it's all about how you turn that into some music. Now what we've got on the end of this, I'm going to keep that going. Now anyone who's familiar with the playing of people like Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, Andy Timmons, you know, you could go on and on and on and on naming the kind of people that would use this sort of legato playing. Eddie Van Halen maybe. It's like you could just, you know, Randy Rhoads, it doesn't matter who you want to think of. This is the kind of thing that they would do with that technique. So to get the technique down, first and foremost, you want to practice a whole bunch of exercises to build it up and then turn it into something that sounds like music. Now, turning it into a lick or a run that you can use is all about exit points. So adding in bendy, vibrato, expressive ideas on the end of this, that's the sort of way that you turn this into something that can become musical, okay? So let's talk about alternate picking and what that is. Something that a lot of people need to start figuring out with their alternate picking is how you grip your pick, okay? That's very important. So a really good pick grip is to have like a 45-degree angle off the side of the finger and only gripping the pick between the thumb and the first finger. There's plenty of great guitar players out there who grip the pick with a couple of extra fingers like this. There's a number of different ways to do it. You look at someone like Marty Friedman, who's a great player, and he has his wrist out at a strange angle and all of this stuff. I'm not saying that any of those players are wrong. I would never even dream of doing that. Some of these players are like my idols. I love them. But having studied this stuff to a really high degree over a very long time, there are some common denominators. So when you look at people like Guthrie Govan, Paul Gilbert, John Petrucci, Frank Gambale, Jason Becker, the list could go on and on and on of great players. They use a 45-degree picking angle so that you can slice through the string, and they're generally gripping between the thumb and the first finger. You do have to find what works for you, but I honestly would say that if you experiment with this pick grip, it's probably the most versatile of them all, okay? So once you've got your pick grip down and a few of them sorts of things, I would then suggest you want to start working on runs, a bit like the ones that you see on the slide in front of you right now. So what I'm doing here, I'm playing through a scale form, and what I'm doing is, as I'm playing through the 3 notes per string scale shape, I'm playing a 6-note sequence. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the 5th string, then I'm starting that sequence again from the 5th string to the 4th string. So just taking it all the way through this shape, really. Okay? Now at that point, this is just an exercise. But if you want to turn that into something that you can use in a musical context, like Paul Gilbert would do, or like Jason Becker would do, those kind of guitar players, on the end of it, I've now added an exit. So this is actually a legato exit, because I think it's quite nice to have variation between the different sounds. So if I'm playing that through slowly, you can hear, obviously, with the picking, you've got that aggressive sort of sound. Then with the legato stuff, it's all smoother. So up to speed, it sounds like this. Okay, so there's some picking ideas for you. Now let's talk about sweep picking. When most people talk about or teach sweep picking, they talk about playing arpeggios. Now that makes sense because there aren't too many instances on the guitar where you're only going to be playing 1 note per string, and arpeggios is the most obvious example. I thought I would do something a little bit different here and make it a bit more interesting. So what we've got here is the use of 4th intervals. Okay, so 4th intervals are difficult to play on the guitar, again because of the fact that there's only a couple of ways to play them, which is going to be wide stretches, like very wide stretches, or playing 1 note per string like we've got here. So this example sounds like this. Now, if I wasn't able to sweep pick, it would be very, very hard, like a real hassle to alternate pick this. So what I'm doing with the first bunch of intervals, I've got up, down, down, up. And that on its own would make a really good little exercise to practice. Okay, and what you have to work on when you're doing this sort of stuff as well is the rolling element of the first finger. So if I just keep my first finger flat, all of the notes just bleed into each other. But if I roll so that the first finger starts off of the guitar and then rolls down, like that, I get a much cleaner sound. Okay, so now that basically, that passage, I've actually taken this from a guitar solo excerpt that I've written for my students over at the Cutting Edge Guitar platform. And the solo that is a solo study that shows a number of different ways of how to incorporate 4th intervals. We wrote this bit in to show people how you would use sweep picking with 4ths. But also one of the reasons that I like that kind of thing is that I'm a big fan of Frank Gambale, and he uses that sort of stuff in his playing all of the time. So sweep picking is not just about playing crazy arpeggios, it's also about being able to basically just gets you around playing string crossing ideas, which is very, very difficult on the guitar. And then the last element that I want to talk to you guys about is tapping. Now tapping is just a answer to another guitar playing problem. So we talked about economy picking being the answer to the problem of string crossing. Tapping is the answer to the problem of big stretches. Now what I've actually put on the example on the music notation here, basically I'm playing 2 different pentatonic scales at the same time. I'm playing them a 5th apart. So what I'm playing is A minor pentatonic in my left hand, and then what I'm going to do in the right hand as I'm playing through A minor pentatonic there, I'm going to tap E minor pentatonic. Now that's going to give me a sound slowly that comes out like this. kind of like this really bubbly, intervallic, jumping sort of sound. Now, if I wasn't able to use the tapping technique, that kind of thing would be completely unavailable to me. And you might be watching this and you might not want to play ideas like that. But if you want to play ideas like Greg Howe does, or Guthrie Govan does, or Eddie Van Halen did, like, you know, pick your famous guitar player that did all of that stuff. If you don't have the facility for tapping, it's just not going to be available to you, and you're not going to be able to do those things. So if you really want to get to grips with your technique, there's a number of different ways that you can do that at Cutting Edge Guitar. I have a whole bunch of online courses that cover all of that stuff. Your first port of call is my free course that is just like an entry into all of that, shows you all the things that you'd need to do. You can also take one-to-one lessons with me if I have availability. There is a way to apply to see what lesson slots I've got available. Or also, if you're the kind of person who's into books, you can get printed versions of these again now. They're back in print, newly, freshly printed here in August. And but also there's digital versions of these that have guitar profiles and PDFs and lots of extra other stuff. So check those out if you want to build your chops. Okay, so the next thing that we want to talk about is how to turn all of this into a musical vocabulary. So how I look at musical vocabulary is that you've basically got a pyramid, or it's what I call the scale pyramid, is that we're contained within every scale. If you look at any chord, there will be a bass chord that has a scale that's applicable to it. So in this case, what you can see on the screen there, this is a line which is based around the scale of A Dorian. There's a little bit of chromaticism in the end there, but that is because I'm imagining that I'm playing over a track that's like this. So this is a fusion-based rock track, and effectively it's just an extended A minor 7, A minor 9, A minor 11 groove. And the line that's written on the screen there is a line that's using all sorts of intervallic loops and jumps from within the scale. It sounds like this: 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3. So as you can see with that as well, this is a fairly mid-paced idea, but it's kind of licking along a little bit as well. So with the 16th notes, I want good control of my fretting hand, I want good control of my picking hand, synchronization between the two to then execute my vocabulary. So I'm seeing that in this scale shape. And then of course I've worked on my technical ability so that I can do all of that stuff. And then finally, I can get my vocabulary out. So, that's the base way of looking at things, okay? So, the next thing that I want to talk about is, with your bass scale, you've got 7 notes available to you in modal scales. There's always going to be like bebop scales and all of this stuff that has more notes, but generally speaking, most guitar players are going to be thinking about modes of the major scale, modes of melodic minor, modes of harmonic minor. Okay, so out of those 7 notes, we can then start looking at extracting 6 notes, which is something called a hexatonic option. Now, a hexatonic option in rock guitar playing, there's 2 well-known ones in a minor context, which is to basically take your minor pentatonic scale and add a 9th. Now, the reason why that is a popular way to do it is because over a minor 7 chord, depending on the context that you're in, sometimes it's not appropriate to play a 6th if you're playing Dorian ideas, and it's also not appropriate to play a minor 6th from Aeolian ideas. So a way that we get around that is to omit that 6th completely. Okay, so if you omit the 6th completely, you're left with a scale that has roots, 2nd, flat 3rd, 5th, flat 7. So that's what we call a minor hexatonic. Now, another hexatonic scale that most of you watching this will know is the blues scale. Because the blues scale is root, minor third, fourth, flat 5, flat 7. Okay, so what I've put in this line is an idea that uses a bit of the minor hexatonic, like adding notes from the ninth, and then I've also got an element where we use the flat 5. So the line in context over the track sounds like this, and then I'll break it down. 1, 2, 3, 4. A couple more times. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. And 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's break that down and explain what's actually happening there. So in this particular line that I'm playing, I'm adding in the ninth in the twiddly bit at the beginning. Now here, I've made sure that I haven't played a major 6 or a minor 6. It's been completely omitted. And then I'm sliding out to my ninth here. This is all standard scale of vocabulary. So here I've got my 4th, 9th, minor 3rd, 4th again, but then here's my flat 5 of the blues scale. And into some bending to exit. And there's your hexatonic idea. So let's now talk about pentatonics. When you're developing your pentatonic vocabulary, you want to be able to play pentatonic ideas in all 5 shapes of the pentatonic scale. But something that's really cool when you're starting to play over a track like this is that there are more than one pentatonic available to you. So over something like this, most guitar players would just assume that you can play A minor pentatonic. Okay? A minor chord, A minor pentatonic. Makes sense. Although that makes a lot of sense that you could just use A minor pentatonic over an A minor groove, if you harmonise the Dorian mode, or you've got to look at it as where it comes from in terms of its parent key. So A Dorian comes from G major. If you harmonise G major, you'll find that you have an A minor 7 chord, a B minor 7 chord, and an E minor 7 chord. That means that you can play B minor pentatonic and E minor pentatonic when you're playing over any chord of the key. You've just got to look at resolving it correctly. So what I've done in the line that you see here, it starts with a bit of A minor pentatonic, then it slides into B minor pentatonic, and then we'll exit on E minor pentatonic. Now finally, the exit note that I'm playing is an A. Okay, so you've got so that means I'm using all 3 pentatonics in one run, basically, along the top 3 strings. Now, again, if I put that into context, it comes out like this. Okay, so when you're looking at something like that, what is happening? You're actually using, like, every time that you use one of those pentatonics, you want to look at this like fractions. You're using 5 notes out of the available 7. So when you go from A minor pentatonic, you're using one set of 5 notes. Then when you're using B minor pentatonic, you're shuffling it up, so you're using a different set of 5 notes. And then finally with E minor pentatonic, a different set of 5 notes again out of the available 7. So each one just gives you a different texture. Now something else that's cool with this is you can also do this with arpeggios and triads. So let's now take a look at those. The line that you see in front of you here is using an A minor 7 arpeggio. Then I'm going into a G major 7 arpeggio. Then I'm going to use A minor 7 again as a string skipped 3 notes per string version. Then finally I'm going to come down B minor 7 in the same fashion. So slowly all together that would come out as this. Now let's put that into some context. Okay, so as much as we can do that with arpeggios, we can also do this with triads. So the line that you've got in front of you here is entirely composed of triads. So let's break it down, and then again I'll put this into context. So all of these triads are being extracted from within the A Dorian mode. So we start off with just root minor third really, but from the A minor triad. Then we go into this, which is F sharp diminished. Then we've got, so we're playing here an E minor. Then when we go to the 6th of A Dorian, this is actually acting as the major third of D major. So then I'm going to do D major, C major, then into G major. So then I'm going to go to an F sharp, and then we're going to play an F sharp diminished again, G major, exit to an A, and then finally the full exit is A minor triad. So literally that entire line is all composed of triads. So let's put that one in context. And the last way that I would say that you want to look at developing your vocabulary is intervals. So what you have on the slide in front of you here is a run in A Dorian, where what I'm doing is playing every other note. That is effectively extracting the diatonic thirds from the scale. It comes out like this. Takes me to the end of beat 1 in bar 2. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move up to playing basically diatonic seconds, which is moving up through tones and semitones through the scale. Now on the very exit, again I'm playing every other note, so that's going back to playing the third. So all the way through this is... Again, let's put that into context. So in order to develop a well-balanced vocabulary of licks, runs and ideas, you want to be able to play scalar concepts, hexatonic, pentatonic, arpeggio, triad and intervallic concepts. Now that is, as I said earlier, a concept that I call the scale pyramid. So again, if you want to go in depth into all of that, free course at the link in the description below, or if you're ready to just dive straight in, I have a whole bunch of paid courses at Cutting Edge Guitar. You can take one-to-one lessons with me if I have availability. To apply for those, the link is in the description, or you can also check out my books digitally on the site, or they're available in print on Amazon. So outside of this video, I know that we've talked about a lot of information. There's a lot of things for you to unpack here, but more help is at hand. If there are other things that you would like to ask me or other content ideas that you have for me for my YouTube channel here, drop me a line in the comments. Do give this a like, share it to anyone that you think it would help, and subscribe to the channel. And I will look forward to seeing you in the next lesson. Take care.